So Austin says G takes f6 because I want to open the G file and attack white's king. Knight f6 is an ideal because we want that knight to recapture on c5, and queen f6, e4. We have to move the queen or play h6 because bishop g5 is annoying. So Arvin says queen f6 because when you play c5, you want to take back with your knight. So, a lot of people are giving me g takes f6, and thematically, I think this is the move black would really like to play. It potentially opens the g file. I don't think we're wildly concerned about our king in the center, at least for the moment. And I could easily imagine, like, if black just sets up with something like rook g8, queen c7, rook d8, c5, he has no bad pieces. His king in the center is totally fine. But here, I actually think gf6 is not a great move, and it's because white has a very specific response here, and I think that's actually quite important. The computer, I think, said white was a little better after a couple of moves, but there's only one that I think is actually really convincing, and it's very important. So what should white play here to punish g takes f6? Yes, Arvind, well spotted. Give everyone else a second to answer, but actually, Arvind, I'll just let you talk if you want. What you got for me, Arvind?
So in these positions, white would like to play e4 and d5 because even if you sack a pawn, because it really ruins black's structure and opens up the center, and black can't castle either way because, well, their king would be really exposed.
I think this e4 move is a real problem because basically the second black gets c5 in, I like black's position, but the problem is after e4. I think when I was checking this, the machine said black was not in such bad shape here, but from a human point of view, black's position looks absolutely terrifying, and in practice looks totally miserable. So yeah, e4 basically is good prophylaxis against c5, but if black's not going to play c5, I totally don't believe in his attacking potential on the king side, and so as a result, I think you've sort of compromised your structure for no reason. So I think the computer said that, yes, Arvind, I did hear you talk. But yeah, you said it right. I think after gf6, I think the computer said white was still slightly better here, but this position I don't mind at all for black. I'm not worried about e4 coming anymore, and we're ready for rook g8, bishop d6, queen c7, rook d8, or even castle long. And it feels like black should have a lot of counterplay very fast, and this seems very reasonable, but I think e4 would have been quite annoying. So returning back to black's point of view, between queen f6 and knight f6, I'm pretty agnostic. I don't think it should matter a ton. The real question was, should we really like make a direct change to the position with g takes f6, which is very tempting, but I actually think here would be wrong, specifically because of the e4 advance coming too quickly. So it came knight f6, queen e2. The next few moves weren't wildly important. E4 came, castle, castle back. Queen c7, bishop g5, I played a5, rook c1, rook c8, and now bishop e3. And this was the next really critical moment. Obviously, white's threatening to win a piece by taking on c5, and we should stop that from happening, but it's not so easy to find the best way or figure out the best way for black to coordinate here. And it's very easy to blunder the game away in one move. So I want everyone to really take their time here. I mean, I had plenty of time on the clock. This was early in the game, and I made a move that certainly should have lost the game. And so I'm hopeful that you guys can play better than me, but you're probably not going to play better than me if you just guess really fast. So take some time, decide what you want to do about this pin and why. I guess this puzzle can somewhat be solved by elimination for what it's worth. Guys, if you just give me a move and don't explain why you want to make it, that doesn't help me very much, and it doesn't help you very much. So Eric has got a move. It's interesting. I'll give everyone else a moment or two to think. So a couple people have made one point. Knight d7 loses directly because of bishop b5. I think this is just winning a piece on the spot. Doesn't seem like there's a way out of that. So that I think we can rule out. That's a good start. But, okay, fine. We can't we can't play knight d7, so we must move the queen. Now, we have to figure out the best place to move our queen to not have horrible things happen to us. Because rest assured they can if you choose the wrong place. So Austin has a good point. He's pointing out that queen e7 would be a mistake because after e5 here, this I think is now crushing because when we move this knight, we're going to get bishop h7. And the problem with the queen on e7 is that bishop takes f3 would be our normal in-between move to get rid of knight g5 check, and something like this, black is really computer. Something like this, after takes knight d5, black is surely fine. But the problem is because we placed the queen on the e7 square, e takes f6 attacks this queen. And then at the end of all this, the tactics are favoring white. So we cannot put the queen on e7 because e5 will kill us. So that rules out queen e7, and then what between queen d6 and queen b6? I guess the best way of putting this is bust one of these moves, and then the other one you should be able to just make the move and hit the clock, because otherwise we're out of options. Because both of these moves look scary, like, you know, queen d6 potentially walks into e5 at some moment, and queen b6 you're going to self-pin again. So these moves both look scary, but one of them holds together and the other one does not. Yeah, Arvin, this is not so easy. I mean, again, like, I was, like, not the worst chess player in the world when I played this game, and I got the wrong move. So let's figure out which of these moves sucks, and then play the other one. Austin, that variation looks flimsy. I think you can find an improvement somewhere. So Arvind, the point is, you're saying queen b6 is bad because rook c5 takes and then e5 with bishop h7 is crushing. But the problem is black always has this in-between move bishop takes f3 if we have not put the queen on e7. And here I think black is absolutely fine. In fact, probably black is slightly better. So Eric is saying if queen b6 we have a problem, bishop c5, rook c5, and queen e3. I don't necessarily believe that. Why is this an issue? Rook c8, knight e5, you say? And you think white is better once knight c4 comes? Okay, let's test that theory. I don't think you're better. In fact, I think you're probably worse. e4 is going to drop. Yeah, I think actually white is just losing a pawn directly here, if I'm not mistaken. Certainly seems like it, right? So I don't think that's right. Okay, so Vihan has a good point. He's saying after queen d6, white has this option to go bishop c5, rook c5, and then e5. And now after bishop takes f3, we can start going e takes d6 and go for this endgame. When he says the d pawn is good, which it certainly is. And white is winning here, but it's not easy, and white still has to win the game, and in fact she even ended up losing because the position still requires some precision. So that is good elimination. Here I had considered only e5 in this position. When I saw this line take, and here bishop a6 comes, and I will drop in exchange because if rook c7, there's bishop f4. But I thought this position after, say, bishop takes e3, rook c8, I thought here I should be fine. I am in exchange down, but I have no weaknesses. There's annoying pressure against b2 and f2, and if I go like knight e4 and laser down on f2 really hard, and white's bishop is sort of aimless and not doing anything. I thought despite the exchange less, and I already have a pawn, of course, I thought despite the exchange less, black should be totally fine here. The computer disagreed. It did say I was a bit worse, but nothing like too unmanageable. But this bishop takes c5, rook c5, e5, and bishop takes f3, ed6 is incredibly powerful. So there came bishop e2, rook c5, so of course I took on d3. And now you guys are going to try to beat me. So white actually has a really difficult decision to make here. Obviously you're moving this f1 rook, but both rook c1 and rook d1 seem very tempting. And I actually think there's a pretty big difference, and one of them is much stronger than the other. So let's think for a bit and decide what we want to do with this rook. What two moves? Rook d1 and rook fc1. I mean, there's some calculation to be done too. Like, I mean, rook fc1, obviously we're trying to go rook c8, trade the rooks, and like invade the back rank and push the pawn through. But rook d1 also kicks this bishop with a gain of tempo, gets you ready to potentially take a5, pushes the d pawn through directly as well. I mean, both of these moves look very tempting, and figuring out which one is best is a pretty demanding task. So this is your chance to beat me, guys. It's not that trivial. I mean, white is winning here, but you should be careful. So let's see what you guys can come up with, and actually calculate and think a bit and find some sample lines. So, Austin, you want to share that line with us, or what your thoughts are? All right, let me find you.
The only way black can get the bishop back in the game is to play bishop f5, because bishop c2 is covered by the c5 rook, and then the a4 pawn prevents bishop b5. So the only way, is bishop f5 and then e5. Black has no choice but to give up the pawn. But once that happens, he's covered c8 and d7, and then he should be fine.
Okay, and so how would you want to play with white here?
That part I haven't thought about. I just thought about how black is going to defend.
Fair enough. Yeah, bishop f5 and e5 is certainly a thought. Another thing black can do is play bishop e4, bishop d5, and try to block the d file and anchor the bishop this way as well. But those are two very valid thoughts. Fair enough. All right. Anyone else have some thoughts here? Okay, Vihan, you want to share with us what you have in mind then?
Oh, I think you can go rook d1 and then just push d7.
Okay, so I don't know if you've been around for my just lecture, but I always hate the word just when it comes to chess analysis. It's like, oh, just this one move, as if you've seen everything and there's nothing else to see here. So let's say I fight back a little bit. You want to play d7 now? I mean, I think here already I am starting to worry if you're worse. Like, you cannot play rook c8 because of knight d7, and if you play this and I go like g5 or something, and next up is king g7, and then I'll be ready for rook d8 without a pin, I think it's easy for white to end up worse here. So be a little more careful than that. Okay, Arvind, I'm not following what you're saying. Do you want to share with us on the microphone?
Oh, I was going to say, if white plays rook fc1 and black tries to play knight e4, white can ignore the threat on the rook and just play d7.
Are you
because,
sure?
Because if you take and you take back, yeah, okay, that was, okay.
It seems like a relevant issue, right? So yeah, rook fc1, knight e4 is something to think about. It's a good point from Arvind. So Megan is saying rook fc1, knight e4, rook c8. Megan, do you want to share with us? Oh, your microphone doesn't work. Okay. So I guess your point is rook fc1, knight e4, rook c8. You want to go for this position with rook d1 at the end, but here I think knight c4 and knight takes b2, and once black takes on a4, I think he should hold. For example, say check, rook a8, takes here, I don't know. You can give me this check if you want, but I'm actually not even losing this pawn, but this position, even without the b4 pawn, with 4 on 3 and the anchored knight, I suspect black should make a draw very easily. So that one is not great. Okay, so Roger has a thought. You want to share with us what you had in mind, Roger?
Sure.
So you're saying, what did you wanted, rook d1 or rook c1?
Rook d1.
Okay, and then how did you expect the game to proceed?
Bishop e4 or something, and then you can take on a5, and then I think there might be something like rook b5, and then you threaten to take on d4, and you also threaten to push the pawn a5, a6, a7, and try to promote.
This is pretty good for white. This is what she played, and this is the second best option. And there's still good chances, but the game goes on.
Okay.
I think you can be a bit more to the point than this. Ryan Min, I don't. Rook c2, I don't understand. Rook c1, you mean? Okay. So the real question, so for example, I think rook fc1 is the best move. There's a couple points. So if knight e4, I think just this simple move is good enough. A lot of you guys were looking for something convoluted, but as far as I can tell, there's not a thing black can do about d7 coming next. And Austin, you're saying we can go rook d1, bishop e4, and then rook dc1? No knight e4, but I think knight e4 was not actually something we were wildly concerned about. Yeah, this feels less convincing to me somehow. But I think this move is basically lights out. You do have to see knight e4, rook c6 is calm and collected, but I think it wins the game on the spot. And without that, I don't really know what else black can try to offer resistance. Rook c8 and like rook takes f8, rook c8 check, it's coming. And I think with, as long as the queen side is still alive, I don't think that black will hold this game by sacrificing a piece for the d pawn and having an exchange for one pawn. If the queen side pawns are still there, white should win. So I think rook c1 was the way. In the game, there came rook d1, which was not as strong, bishop e4. And then here it's an important point that d7 would fall to bishop d5. But rook takes a5 came. And here, this one was not, I played rook d8, this is fine. Rook b5 came, which was consistent with Roger's plan. And now I think black's best option was to play some kind of bishop c6. And then say takes and knight d5. And here, the rook has to move and should stay in touch with the a pawn, and so let's say something like this. And I saw this position and I thought, it's very good for white. I cannot take on a4, obviously, and b5 is coming. But the computer was not that impressed. And looking back at this now with, you know, let's say more experienced eyes of a stronger player, my suspicion is black should be more or less okay here. I think I should not have a huge problem sacrificing my bishop for the two pawns. I mean, let's say I go like g6, I'm now threatening the a4 pawn, and she does something like this. It's sort of hard for me to believe white's just going to be able to throw a5, b6, and crash straight through. And it feels like at some point I should be able to give a piece for the two pawns. And then with only one pawn down and this rook ending with this exchange down, I think this should probably be a relatively routine draw for black. It's not totally trivial, but my suspicion is this would have held the game without a ton of argument. Does that sort of make sense to everybody? Yeah. I thought that was probably the way. Instead, I went for a very long think and played bishop c2. Did I play bishop? Yeah, I played bishop c2. So, this was a more ambitious move, of course. So white has to play rook a1 to stop the a pawn, and then I played knight d5. So basically here, my thought was this was actually sort of ambitious. Like, I'm basically trying. I could have traded the d pawn for my b pawn, and I chose not to. And here my argument was if I can keep my b pawn alive and round up the d pawn, then it's actually not that hard for black to just win the game. So here, this is actually not trivial for white, and there is a continuation that I think wins, but you have to calculate a very specific variation and calculate it really well, because it's not that hard to imagine it going wrong. And indeed, white started to mess up pretty badly in the next few moves. So what should we play here? And calculate closely. Ryan, that's not a very convincing variation. I'm not going to resign after that move. Okay, Sepahur, you're getting closer. Do you want to talk about your variation?
So I got first a5,
Okay, and so I got bishop d3.
3 rook b7,
Mm-hmm.
bishop a6 rook a7,
Mm-hmm.
bishop c4 a6.
Why am I putting the bishop on c4 instead of b5?
Okay, yeah, bishop b5 a6.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
The problem is now your rook is stuck in front of your
Yeah.
pawn and does not have a great way to get out of the way.
Yeah, I have to think about how to get the rook out.
So it's easy to calculate. It's easy to see that if you play a5, you can get that position. But once we've got this position with the rook on a7 and the bishop on b5, it's not easy to actually get that rook out of the way because it seems like rook b7 is always hit with bishop c6. So Austin has a line here. He's suggesting a5, bishop d3, rook b7 here, and then a6, and you want g6. But I think king f8 feels much more natural, right? To bring the king closer to the center and get ready for potentially even rook takes d6 to come. Like here, for example, if black gets to play rook d6 next, and you do something like rook a8 check, king e7, a7, bishop c6, and okay, of course you're going to win my bishop for the pawn, but that's sort of the kind of position where I think probably black will hold. He didn't manage to liquidate the queenside completely, but he does have only one pawn left, defended by a knight on an anchored square. This feels pretty close to a draw if you don't have something direct. So Kelsey, you want to share your line?
I thought playing a5, bishop d3, and then rook takes d5.
Okay, so if I go ed5, a6, I guess let's say I bring my king to babysit your d-pawn so I can put my rook on a8. You could easily just end up a piece down here. In fact, I think you probably will.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Austin gives a7, rook a8, rook e1, bishop f5, but also rook takes a7 seems pretty convincing there. Yeah, so I don't think that one's quite gonna work. But yeah, this is your typical, like, this is what it takes to beat strong players. Like, you know, when I played this bishop c2, knight d5, there's no doubt this was wrong. It was a bad move, and you can, and this, but like, that's your typical mistake of a strong player, is that it's wrong, but it's not easy to prove. And it takes effort to punish mistakes from people who are pretty good. So let's really try to calculate a bit better. Arvind is giving rook c5, bishop d3, a5. But here, if I go bishop a6, I'm ready to take d6 next, and then you're probably just going to lose. So I think you should play this move, and I think this should just be a draw, right? And yeah, the knight and the bishop are coordinating well. We need to calculate really well here to find the way through. I mean, and remember, the most principled move is clearly a5. Get this pawn moving. I mean, you can calculate this line to a5, a6, and rook a7. I mean, a lot of people are potentially looking at that. So Sipper says, what about a5, bishop d3 here, and now rook a7, bishop e5, and rook c1 instead of a6. So your point with this move is that you want to stop bishop c6, or what is it? Okay, but let's say I go g5 or something and make some room for my king. Now I'm ready for rook takes d6 to come next. This doesn't seem that trivial. Rook b7, bishop a6 is annoying. You can always go a6 here, and then after takes you can give check and a7. But I don't think you're going to do better with this ace pawn than winning my bishop. Like, for example, I can play rook a6 and... Alright, yeah, no doubt, you can play rook b5 and you'll be in exchange up, but with everything defended in black's position and the knight anchored on d5 holding it, I don't think you're going to win this game. I think this should be a draw. Here, I don't think you're going to do better than that. Like, my next move is bishop c6, you'll have rook c6, rook g8, and a8 queen, but like, I don't think you're going to do better than this, basically. And so that didn't quite cut it. We're getting closer though, but really try to calculate from here. I mean, I guess what we can do though, I think we can play a5, because we'll see that in this position after rook b7, if we want it here, we have rook b7 back and draw, right? Well, it's not clear that we're even making a draw in the other lines. You might just, like in a lot of other lines we saw, black was just rounding up the pawns and winning the game. So I'll let you guys play it to here, and now you have the option to make a draw by moving back and forth. Now, the question is, do we exercise this option, or do we have something better? And this is where good calculation has to come into play. Hang on, Austin, what do you mean? If she can't find a way to bust bishop c2, she can force a draw. Which bishop c2? Oh, earlier. I'm not sure. Let's just focus on this position for now, though. Find the way through for white. It is there, but it will not be trivial actually, but no matter what. But okay, Sepper, you want to share this line with me? I'm struggling to follow it, but let's talk.
So I was thinking of a6.
Okay, so if I go king f8.
F8, rook a5.
Okay, and if I go bishop c6.
Okay, bishop c6, rook c5.
I'm gonna take this.
Whoops.
I mean, still, this I think is one of the more promising things. You can try this move rook b7 now. And with one pair of rooks, I could imagine this position might actually be winning for white, because with a second pair of rooks, I think it's a very easy draw, but here white actually has an idea to bring a king to c4 and take b4 and go to a pawn ending with an outside passer. And it's hard to imagine black's king can come stop that when the king side is loose. So this is not totally ridiculous, but you have to see this move rook b7. And also after rook b7, I guess it's hard for me to move, right? Because you're threatening to go rook c6 and then a7, and then I'm screwed, right? Yeah, no, but separate her. I don't think Rook B8 A7 is a threat. Like if I go G6 or something here, or let's go here. After A7 here, I think I'm making a draw for sure. If I can give this bishop for the pawn while also keeping the rooks on board, I definitely should make a draw. But if you can take this one and then do this, this might be winning. No, here it's checkmate. So we have to. So okay, well, white will have to burn a tempo, and then let's burn a tempo on something or other. And now the question is, can we win this one? I'm not actually sure we can. Yeah, I'm not sure this is that convincing. So let's try to calculate a little better here. What do we do to force this one through? I'll give you guys a hint. The Shankland rule is whenever you have a move you really want to make, opponent is stopping you from doing so, the first question you should always ask yourself is what happens if I do it anyway, and that can become relevant in more places than one. Right, so Roger has an interesting line. You want to share it?
Sure. Actually, it's a very tricky pawn. I don't know if it's forced, but I think that one move is Rook C7 and
Okay, so let's see what we got here. So you say take Rook C8. Here doesn't Rook D1 end things immediately?
isn't there? Oh, yeah.
This is just so I'm not taking this rook. That much should be pretty clear.
Yeah.
So let's say I go King F8. What do you want then? I think I'm holding this together here. Because if you play A6, I can take this.
Yeah,
and
you can take.
Rook at A8, right?
I think so.
And my king is coming in time. Like, I don't know. Well, here you're threatening C8 queen. But I can go bishop D7, and I think my king will come scoop up the pawn, and then you probably just lose.
Yeah.
So that didn't quite cut it. It's a tough spot, guys. This is D7. I don't think this helps your position at all. That's not the pawn you're trying to promote. It only helps my king get to E7 faster. So Seppuher says A6, King F8, Rook C7 may work. I thought we just discussed that this black holds together. Also, actually, I think this move is extremely convincing too, because if you take it, I have knight C7 and I mate you on the back rank. So this one does not work either. Austin says we need to use that A1 rook. Yes, we do. We also need to get our rook on A7 out of the way. Let's try to calculate here. Okay, Austin, you want to share your line? You should just be able to turn on your mic.
Okay, so we play rook c1, and then we play rook c5 next, because now the bishop can't go to a6. Like if we kick the bishop with the other rook, then the problem is the bishop always can go to a6, but we have one rook to cover a6 and the other one covers c6. So now when we play rook c5, the bishop has to run away.
Okay,
So
so you want
e2 or
this?
something.
Let's say I go bishop d3.
And then now d7, and then we go rook c8 next.
Is that convincing though? Maybe. Maybe it just works, but no, is this that easy? Doesn't look that trivial to me. My next move is knight c7. And then you're definitely not going to win the game. Yeah, I think that's a little far-fetched. All right, guys. What's the move we really want to play here? We just kicked the bishop off of... Okay, so everyone's saying, yeah, a6. So a6, and I go king f8. And the problem is now, this rook on a7 is in front of the pawn. What's the move we really, really, really want to play to kick this stupid rook out of the way? All right, yeah, rook b7, everyone sees this. Problem is bishop c6. And it looks like we're just stuck here, but white has something. Sepper, you want to say what you have?
So I'm thinking rook c1.
And what if I take your rook?
A b7.
And knight b6.
Knight b6. Rook c8.
Yes. This is the key point. And I had calculated, when I was playing the game, I had calculated it all the way to this point here when I played bishop c2 instead of going for the position where I take the d6 pawn for the b4. I had calculated it to here, and I thought I was good to go. And again, it comes down to that same principle of calculation that I hadn't appreciated as well at the time. What move do I really, really want to make? Why can't I do it? What happens if I do it anyway? The move we really want to make is rook c8, and it turns out this just works. Now, even this is not that trivial. For example, after knight c8, b8 queen, king e8, black's not losing on the spot, and something like this will come. And here, I think this is probably winning, but it's not that easy. For example, if black's rook could migrate through this knight to the d5 square, I believe this would be a fortress. You cannot attack the rook, and this will stop b5, and you can't attack the knight, and the king will keep the pawn safe. And I think this should be, if black can go rook d5 and then keep the king on the king side, he should make a draw, but I don't believe he's fast enough to pull that off. It will take a lot of time to organize the pieces like this, and I think white should be able to make a lot of trouble in the meantime. For example, if we think about how this rook is going to get to d5, you don't really want to move the knight, because then the b pawn will just go to get to b5 first. So you will have to do something like rook e7, rook d7, king e7, defend the knight, bring the rook here. That's a start. But you need the king on e7 to do that, and if the king's on e7, queen h4 is there. I don't think black is in time to coordinate to make a fortress here. So this was the big solution. You need to calculate that rook b7 is working, rook c1 comes, and then we have this this very important move, rook c8 at the end. Because without that, black is fine. I mean, I had seen this when I was expecting rook c7, and let's say here probably this is just the natural way for the game to end. I don't think there's much beyond that. But rook c8 is there. Yeah, I think that'll do it for this game. I'll just open it for. I'll just show how it actually went. In the game, white played rook c5, which really missed the chance. And here, I think a5 was still fine. For example, this should be a draw. But she tried to hold the pawn with rook c6, but now it's actually black's totally winning, and it's very easy. The king just comes straight to d8, to d7, and black has all the pawns easily under control. He'll just scoop them all up and win. So for the last few minutes, I'd just like to open it up for general Q&A. Anything you guys want, I'm happy to answer. So fire away, everybody. How do you get off tilt? That's a good question. So the thing that I would recommend was a strategy that I first heard a long time ago from a fellow young American player, Darwin Yang, who's now mostly away from chess as far as I know. But what he said was that whenever he loses like a really horrible game or is like super upset, what he does is after the game, he gives himself 1 hour to throw as big a temper tantrum as he possibly wants, just like punch pillows, throw stuff, break stuff, yell, scream, complain, whine, everything he wants for 1 hour. And like if his parents or someone is with him, they're not allowed to tell him to stop. And after that 1 hour, he's not allowed to do any more. But that's it. And I actually think that's a really healthy way of getting over it, because we're human beings. We get disappointed when we screw up, especially if we screw up big time in something important and something we care very deeply about. And if you try to tell yourself, oh, just shake it off and pretend the emotions are not real, you do yourself a disservice. And I think that giving yourself a predetermined amount of time to just, let it all out, I think is a very, very good way of doing it. And I really like that rule. Who do I think will win candidates? I think it's actually a really compact field. One thing I said before the tournament started was that I don't believe there are any two players whose combined chances exceed 50%. I think if anyone wanted to make a bet with me, I mean, I don't bet in general, but like if anyone were to make a bet and they said, okay, and you get to pick any two players you want and I get the other 6, I think that I will be a favorite. So in general, before the tournament, I thought Ding was the favorite. And by a favorite, I mean like maybe he has a 20% chance when the average player has a 12% chance. So it's a wide open tournament. Right now, like, look, it's Ding Caruana tomorrow. If Ding wins, like basically everybody's on 50% again. It's like, it's definitely, it's a wide open tournament. So Austin says, is it bad that I don't get mad after I lose? It's a good question. You want to have a healthy level of emotion. If losing doesn't hurt you at all, it's sort of hard to believe you're going to find the same level of motivation to try to avoid that happening in the future than if it does hurt you. But if it hurts you so much that you just don't want to play chess anymore and you're like crying in your room, oh, I don't want, that's not good either. There should be a healthy amount of pain that comes from a loss. And it should be enough that you don't want it to happen again, but not so much that you're like so emotionally crushed that you're unable to continue a tournament or like play better the next round. Let's see, other questions. Who's your favorite chess player besides yourself? Trust me, I'm not my favorite chess player. I mean, Magnus, of course, he's really out of this world, but there's a lot of, I don't know, there's a lot of guys who I think play very interesting chess. I quite like Report's chess as well. I'm a huge fan of Hikaru. He was certainly a hero to me, growing up in the US, like, watching him become really great really fast when, there's never been another player growing up in the US to make it as far as him apart from Fischer, and it's just amazing watching. So I'm a big fan of him as well. Other questions. What book do you recommend? Small Steps to Giant Improvement and Small Steps to Success. Other questions. How did you get inspired to play chess? I'm just a very competitive person in my nature. I love the thrill of competition and competitive games. And I was always a good athlete, but never a great one. Like there were 60 boys in my class in elementary school. I might be number 5 in any given sport, which is good, but I'm clearly not making any NBA drafts like that. And then I found chess and I was really good really fast and I kept getting better. And I think human beings are just sort of predisposed to like things that we're good at. We probably would have gone extinct a long time ago if we weren't that way. What is your favorite sport? I like a few. I like soccer. I like football, like American football. I was a huge baseball fan back in the day, and I don't think I would be the chess player I am today if I hadn't taken a fastball to the face when I was 12. What age did you start chess? Very late. I played my first tournament just before I turned 11. Other questions. When do you think Carissa will become a GM? I don't know, when she decides it's important to her and wants to fight through it. She clearly has the potential, and the question is, does she want to put in the time? And if so, there's some degree of randomness. Some people, I mean, if she's 24-20 right now and devotes herself to chess like for a very long time, she's going to get stuck at some point for like a long time, because that's what happens to people. And will that be at 2,470 or 2,550? You just never know. But GM is not that high honestly. Like there's thousands of GMs in the world at this point. But yeah, anyhow, I suspect if she decides to apply herself to chess pretty seriously, I think she'll make GM very fast. She does have that potential. I'll take one more question. Did you say GMs are bad? No, I just mean like, you know, it's a sort of watered down title in that GM, when it was first invented, was to like distinguish who could challenge like to potentially become a world champion. There were like you know, 20 of them in the world, and because players are just so much better now than they were then, and the requirements have not really changed much at all since then, like the level is, it just doesn't, it's not such a hard title to reach anymore. I mean, you know, getting to 2500 strength with no computers and like no like and like very limited access to books and not very good tournaments, like that's really really tough, and it's much easier to do it now that we have these resources. So GM is just not quite the same level of prestige that it used to be. Let's see. All right, is that why old GMs are way worse than new ones? All right, Vichy played pretty well in Norway chess, and having played with Kasparov in 960, I can say the guy still got some smack. But no, I mean, the chess is clearly a young person's game. There's no doubt about it. The average age of the top 100 players in the world is 30. People usually peak in their early 30s, and they start to deteriorate after that. So it doesn't happen right away. You know, you're probably only going to be a little bit worse in your late 30s than early 30s. But like if you're talking, you know, people who are in their 50s or 60s, I think you'd be very hard pressed to find anybody who's playing at the same level as they were when they were younger. All right, on that note, good to see everybody. Good session, and I will catch you guys for the next one.